Hi there, how are you guys doing today? I am in the middle of making a enchilada casserole. It's been one of my most popular videos. The last one I did was chicken enchiladas. This one is beef. So I've got the ground beef here, and I've got my camera over to the left a little bit. You can see it's kind of steamy, so I was trying to kind of keep a better video quality for you guys. So I've got this ground beef. Now this is an 85% lean grass-fed beef. The more lean it is, matter of fact, before I turn this on, I put a tiny bit of water in the pan, just kind of as a hint for you guys, because it just was cooking a little dry, and it wasn't quite done. I don't really want it to burn, but I didn't want to add any additional fat to it because I'm trying to watch with our diet. I'm watching our fat. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add, this is 1 pound of ground beef, and it's already browned, cooked, and I'm going to add now about a half of an onion that I have diced up here. And we're going to save this cutting board because we're going to cut some more onion and some tomato up and make some fresh pico to go with this. So right now I've got a pound of ground beef and a half an onion, and this is all cooked. I'm going to turn my heat down here to medium. We are going to add a tiny little bit of water, about a fourth of a cup. You can see this bottle, I'd already done it once, so I've not used very much. So it's about a fourth of a cup of water, and that's going to really slow down this cooking. I want these onions to cook a little bit, but I don't want them to be, I like them to still be a little bit crunchy in this dish. Turn that off. I think we've got the steam down enough. I want you to be able to have to talk over that. And now I'm just using taco seasoning. Now when you do taco seasoning, get a good quality one. I got this one. I think this one actually came from BJ's. Lots of times I get them at Costco. And so you want to read the ingredients. And if the first ingredient is salt, put it back because you're paying for salt. Okay, you want to get a taco seasoning that has spices listed, herbs and spices listed, not salt listed as the first ingredient. So when you're reading a label, if you're not aware of this, they list the ingredients by the order of how much is in the item. So the closer to the top of the list it is, that means there's the most of that item. So when an item like seasoning salt, and the very first ingredient is salt, that means that the primary ingredient of all that there's more than any other ingredient, is salt. So I try to avoid that for a couple reasons. One, why do we just want to pay for expensive salt? But second of all, when I cook things, I don't like them to be terrible salty. And often I'm cooking things down, and you get the seasoning right, but then you cook it for a while, and it reduces, and you end up with it being even more salty than you like. So I'm turning this off, and you can see here, this is just ground meat. You can see that there's no liquid left, okay? There's no liquid left in here. That liquid does a couple things. It helps things from dry out in the pan. It also helps the seasoning to attach to the meat. And so that's kind of what we were going for. I'll move you over just a little bit so you can see. So the next step we're going to do, we've got this turned off. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put 2 packages of our loaded taco Quest chips. I've got these all broken up, and we're going to put those in the bottom. So here is our second package. Again, these are all broken up. Put these in the bottom of the pan. This is such an easy dish to do. Okay, so now all we have here is 2 packages of the Quest. Those with the loaded taco. Another one I really like is the sweet chili. So if you wanted to change that up a little bit, this is the same one that I use when I do the chicken enchiladas. So next, we're going to put this taco meat on top of it. So this is, again, just the ground beef, 1 pound of ground beef, and with a half of an onion. And then we put taco seasoning, whatever taco seasoning that you like. If you buy it by the package, if you buy it in the big container, whatever you want to do. When you put this in, I do try to put it in and get it all over and not shift it. Since the stuff we're putting on the bottom is in pieces. If we try to move this on top too much, it'll all kind of move. So we want to kind of avoid that if we can. So the next thing I'm going to do is use this Frontera red chili sauce. This is one of my favorite brands. You'll see me use this a lot. Again, it's the same brand I use for the chicken. On the chicken, the enchilada sauce we use is a green chili. So we're just going to pour this right on top here. So really nice. And then we're going to take one more package of the chips and put that on top. And this, we're just going to kind of, got one day, here crunched up, here just crunched up. We're going to be very careful, kind of spread this out a little bit. These are more for flavor because we are not wanting to add any carbs to this, okay? So we got that spread out there. And then we're going to top this with a couple cups of cheese. And then that's it. We're just going to put it in the oven. It doesn't have to cook terrible long. It's only going to cook long enough for this cheese to get bubbly and melty because that meat's already cooked. So this is a really quick one to do. If you food prep with me, one of the things that I talk about doing is having ground beef already cooked. So if when you buy your ground beef, if you have a day a month, when my kids were little, I used to spend a day a month like cooking my ground beef and different things. We're gonna really put some cheese on here. There we go. And then just freeze it. So just cook it and put it back in those 1 pound, 2 pound, depending on how big your family is, how much you need at once. Just put it back in those freezer bags, and then you have it. And it's really quick to make tacos or whatever because your meat or whatever is already cooked. So sometimes that can be a great time saver for busy families. It's something also, maybe if dad doesn't cook or you have a teen that can kind of be helpful but isn't able to full and put a meal together. If you already have that cooked and they just have to add some taco seasoning or whatever to it, it's something really easy that you could have a spouse or a teen do that maybe otherwise isn't able to put a meal together on their own. So that makes a great way to put a meal together quickly. So we're going to take this and we're just going to stick it in the oven until it's all bubbly and it'll be done, and we'll be right back to show you that. Okay, so while we're waiting for our enchilada casserole in the oven, I'm going to go ahead and make some homemade pico to go with this. We're going to start with an onion. I have 2 yellow tomatoes. You can certainly use red tomatoes. I buy yellow whenever I can find them. They are lower in acid, and my tummy's just a little sensitive to them. I love the reds, but they don't always love me. So I try to use yellow whenever I can find them. And then we have a bunch of cilantro, and then I have some lime and salt that we'll be adding. So those are our basic ingredients. And the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to cut the onion. So I know I've been talking a lot lately on how to use a knife. I get a lot of these questions, and so whenever you're watching me, I want you to notice that I'm not just pushing down. It's a big mistake. People see people on TV cutting like this, and when you're doing small herbs and things like that, you can kind of do some of those things. But whenever you're cutting something that's firm, especially like an onion, which is very common to be cooking in the kitchen, the way to best use your knife is not to push down. You push forward and down, but the motion is more forward, okay? And the reason you do this is because it allows the blade to actually get in and then do the work. If I just try to push down, it's hard. It doesn't even want to hardly go. But since I push forward, it goes, okay? So by doing it that way, not only am I making my knife more effective and I'm not working as hard, right? That's part of what we want to do. But also it keeps from damaging whatever I'm cutting, because it can also slip. You know, an onion is very firm. So if that doesn't go in and that slips off, it could be something I could easily be cut on and not have control of when that knife could slip right off of there. So we want to make sure that we understand how to properly use the knife. It's always with this forward motion. Always be aware of where your fingers are. I know when I went to culinary school, we were always taught in the very beginning to cut like this with our knuckles back. I've been cutting so long, I'm not comfortable using them that way. I don't feel like I have as much control, but that was a basic technique that our chefs would use with us. So that's just something, kind of try. The biggest thing is getting comfortable. And cutting onions is one of the things I used to teach my kids to do. One, who wants to do it? It's not always fun because it makes you cry. But you're always needing onions. It's like almost every night I use onions in the kitchen, first of all. So I've got that. Second of all, it's a really great way to develop this skill. Because the more you do it, and the more you use this skill, the more comfortable you'll get with using a knife. The other thing I'm going to tell you is to use a sharp knife. Get as nice of a knife as you can afford. You want to make sure that that your edge is sharp. And so that's really important as well. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is cut our tomato. So first thing I'm doing is just getting the stem out of it. So I'm just cutting around like that. And then we're going to pop that stem right out. And you can see kind of a little bit of that core came out with it. And then again, we're going to use kind of a very similar technique here. So we've got a little bit more of a saw motion because this is a little bit softer. Now with the tomato, because the skin is a little bit tough sometimes, so I prefer to cut it standing up. I find that the knife will sail through it a lot better. See how nicely that goes through that? So we get these nice slices standing up. It's much easier for the knife than to try to fight through that tough upper layer. By the time you get through it, even if you're trying to push, if your knife isn't super sharp and you try to do that, you end up with a squished tomato. So by using this nice sawing motion and doing it standing up, it allows my edge to really get through that tomato peel. And now what I'm going to do with these is just kind of go back. See if you can see this. And I'm going to cut them this way. So now I've cut like 4 strips in this one. Now whether you get 3 or 4 strips is going to depend on entirely how big your tomato was. Sometimes we have these little bitty tomato pieces like this one. We're barely going to get 3 cuts out of that one, okay? So if it's only 2 pieces, that's okay. If you want bigger chunks of tomato, that's okay too. There isn't a wrong way to do that, okay? We do want things to be kind of consistent in size because it does make it more pleasant to eat. And we've got 2 of them sitting together here. We'll cut together. Another secret I found, because I have had times when my knives weren't sharp and I had to use other things, or I couldn't afford an expensive knife, is I had a relative give me right after I got married, I've been married almost 26 years, gave me a serrated knife like you use for bread. And it's an old Ginsu knife, and I'm pretty sure, to be honest, that the person that gave it to me probably got it for free. With buying like their knife. I remember those commercials, buy this knife and get another one free. Well, anyway, joke's on them, because 26 years later, I still have that knife and use it. And I find that it actually cuts tomatoes very nice if you don't have a sharp knife. So occasionally my sharp knife isn't clean, or maybe it needs sharpened. And so I might end up getting that one out instead. So just another tip, if you don't happen to have a knife, if you can't stand there with your tomato and it doesn't do this, and again, I am not pushing down. If you notice, I'm going forward and then back. I'm just dragging that blade. The weight of the knife is what's going through it. I am not pushing it at all. So all I'm doing is just kind of sawing through so that the blade itself gets that sharpness. Okay, that's our goal. Now you'll notice these, the way they came, I may only get 2 little slices to sliver through on these. They look like they're cut just a little bit different. So we're going to mix this in. Since we get this done, we will mix this with our onions. And then we will add the cilantro, lime, and salt. Now, if you wanted, you could also add jalapeno. I am not a spicy fan, so I tend to not, but you absolutely can add jalapeno to this. One of the things I really want to encourage you to do, and it's one of the reasons I don't give recipes sometimes, exact numbers like this, was, it was 2 tomatoes, but it might, for you, it may only be a tomato and a half. In the middle of summer, when we get some of those really big tomatoes, it might be equivalent to 1 tomato. So it's just really, about your judgment about how much you're going to get. And the other thing is about how much you like. Now, this is just for my husband and I, so I'm not going to make a big thing like when my kids were home, and I used to make big old pots of this. But I want you to make it your own. So if you like more onion, you want to throw some garlic in it, if you'd like to do that, go ahead, try it. I advise you only try like a little bit at a time. Add like maybe a clove of garlic and crush that up and add it and see what that flavor tastes like. That's a part of the fun of being in the kitchen, and making it your own. I often eat things at a restaurant and think, oh, how would I do this at home? Okay. Now, with the cilantro, I just kind of fold it up, kind of wad it almost, okay? Don't worry about it, and then just kind of start chopping it. People get real nervous trying to do something they've not done. Gee, that looks hard. No, it's not. I'm going to stop down here towards the end because I do not want all these stems. I'm going to pull these stems out, save the leaves. But these stems, I don't want those in, so I'm going to pull those out. So 1 or 2 more here. And then all we're going to do is I'm just going to kind of wad this up again. And you can I can't explain, but you can kind of feel it in your fingers, how it just kind of wads up into itself. And I'm just going to cut it some more. And get this all chopped up. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to simply go ahead and take all this and put it in here. Okay, and we're going to add to this. This is lime juice. This happens to be key lime juice. I live in Florida. That's what I happen to have. My husband loves key lime pie. And then I'm going to just do some sea salt. This, again, is my preference. I like the pink Himalayan sea salt. We're going to salt this really good. And then we'll stir this up. Now, if you were wanting to know how much I did, because it's the number one question I get, probably about 2 tablespoons of lime juice and about a teaspoon of salt. And then what I would do is just like I'm going to do here in a minute. We want to stir this really good so it all coats in there. We want that salt and that lemon juice. Can you just see how great that is? We just really want all that coated. And then we're going to taste it. And after we taste it, we're going to decide if we need more salt or more lemon juice. I always use clean spoons. Just a habit I got from working in restaurants. Okay. I want a little more salt. So try another half teaspoon. Again, I can't give you exact measurements on this because you're going to have to taste it and see what you like. So what I recommend, starting out with a little. You can always add more. Once you get it in there, you can't take it out. So I definitely recommend just starting with a little bit and then add more to it. All right, so we're gonna take our enchilada casserole out here in a few minutes, and we'll have this to serve with it, and I'll show you that when it's done. Okay, we just took our beefy enchilada casserole out of the oven, and it looks wonderful, and the cheese is all brown, and it's all bubbly. I cannot, well, let me see. Put these on to show it to you because it is hot, because it just came out of the oven. I don't know if you can see it's still bubbling there on the sides. There you go, see how pretty that is? It looks great. So now, super simple. I'm just going to take and cut out a serving here. Now on these, I like to do kind of rounded servings. I just find that they do better. Up there. Just a little bit of meat there. I want all of that on my keto. So now there's our enchilada casserole. This is just my size serving. My husband will have about 3 or 4 times that. And then I'm going to take some of this lovely Keto here. Put it right next to it. So there you have it. We have a beefy enchilada casserole. Super easy. We put it together in with browning the meat, probably about 12 to 15 minutes. And while we were waiting, we cut up our tomatoes and onions for our pico, and we're ready to go. So easily dinner in 30 minutes. So I hope you'll try it, and you'll let me know how you like it. Have a great day and eat healthy.